recap of what is there to be built in Uganda, and we can have all these exchange programs. We can ensure that education, you know, most of the times we've noted that there are many Tanzanians who are studying in Uganda.
Yes.
Than Ugandans could be studying in Tanzania. Of course, about 4 decades back, many Ugandans studied in Tanzania. But we must agree that sometimes many of the good things we have as Ugandans, we don't see them because the bad comes out more. Uganda's education system has been admired by a number of countries within this region. South Sudan, Sudanese are flocking our schools.
Yes.
Kenyans are flocking our schools. Congolese are flocking our schools. Tanzanians, I think they have been here for more than maybe 2 decades into our school system. So if we have these partnerships in the area of education, where we believe Uganda has excelled greatly, I think it benefits both countries.
Yes. Now, Robert, when it comes to these countries, especially now countries that have all these regional blocks, or they are involved heavily in these regional, or they're participants, to be very specific, it would be very important for us to know at one point what are the limitations. Where do you get to become selfish as a country before you consider other countries? I'll give you an example. When they banned the importation of sugar from Uganda to Tanzania back in 2019, the main reason that Tanzania gave was that actually they believed this sugar was coming in from third-party countries. It was not basically Uganda. So right there you see that Tanzania was prioritizing their their well-being, but also the quality of sugar. Or Tanzanians or Kenyans or any other country. SC, we have this.
When you look at Uganda as a country, what do you have over Tanzania? Regional blocks is
to the other countries.
In terms of value addition, where products.
Yes.
Say maybe honey, maybe their milk. And Tanzania is still maybe a bit backward in that. So what do? Tanzania understands that we must give Uganda this opportunity. If maybe Tanzania, they have excelled maybe in the field of education, I'm just giving examples, then we say, okay, this is what you are getting from Tanzania. But where countries become protective is when even what they want to export
yes.
is coming in bulks and actually could even be cheaper. That's why some of the times we've argued that cloth manufactured in Uganda could be more expensive than that imported in Uganda. So if you want to protect your products, your industries, what do? You ban importation of certain materials, or you levy high tax on them. That's why you see there's issues of textile, if you look at the traders through Casita. Because government is saying, no, we've reached a level where can manufacture these materials. Why still import them, yet our local industries are now manufacturing them, so you protect. So at that level, countries should protect themselves. Because at the end of the day, it is all about economic power. You're not going to render your everything, lose everything on behalf of others benefiting. It must be a win-win situation.
Yes.
Today we're exporting a lot of foodstuffs to South Sudan because they have been in a war. You can sell your eggs, you can literally sell anything. You're doing that in Congo. But I want to predict maybe 30 years from now, if there is peace in South Sudan, if we do not think better, these eggs we take in their form, these cereals we take,
yes.
if those will begin digging planting and rearing, and they have that, then South Sudan will not be a market for Uganda, because they have to protect their farmers. They'll tell you you're bringing eggs in Uganda, maybe they're even cheaper, or we are selling at the same price. So we are competing. Then they will automatically cut off that market or put high taxation on those eggs. So protection should only come in when you're sure you have sufficient and surplus. That is why you may find it hard Uganda to be able to talk about importing sugar. We have surplus. Actually, one time the president said, let's now look at medical sugars, those used in soda, those used in making syrups. We take that route because you have many factories. They're even competing in such a perimeter, don't have another factory. So you have surplus. It will be funny for you to import. You have to export. So that's at the level when our country reaches there. But my fear is, I think the East African member states have not had a real discussion on where each one should focus, where their potentials are, to ensure that they do not suffocate each other or they don't reach a time when they are all at the same peak. Because when you look at them, industrialization, value addition, that's the talk of all countries.
It's the same.
So if we get there at the same time, who goes as an IT expert? Who goes maybe in weaponry? Because we can always have these funny wars and, you know, who does what? Who specializes in what?
Well, could we actually say that most of these East African countries haven't taken time to identify what they can actually gain more, the gaps in which they can fill to other countries, but also the gaps within themselves in which they can benefit from other countries? Because like you did say, most of their conversations, most of their talks, it's basically, yes, industrialization. They all have the common goal. Now, what happens to the rest of other fields? That
Let me give you a simple example. In Uganda here, we've had hotels.
Yes.
There was a time when most of our hotels, top managers were Kenyans. And the Kenyans knew that hospitality industry will dominate Uganda. If you talked about any good hotel and you went there, Kenyan
management was all over the place.
They did not know that Uganda is now going to invest in this. Go to Jinja. Our country is now investing so much in tourism. Today when you go there, the trend has changed. That today a Ugandan entrepreneur who owns a hotel knows that we have the people in Uganda who can do this job. Now what happens to that? So you must identify, we must look in the East African community, apart from political integration, monetary union, how do we look at each state, sit, what do you specialize in, what advantage do you have, what weaknesses do I have, so that we supplement each other. Otherwise, this issue of trade is going to land us at a time where countries don't see any benefit.
Absolutely.
UK pulled out of the Brexit because it felt it had opened of the European Union. It felt it had opened so much.
They were not benefiting a lot from the rest of the European countries.
Yes.
They
So
were
they-
the source. They were
So
being
they
taken away
decided to
from.
quit. The Brexit process began. Theresa May had even to, because of handling this. I don't want to see this baby, the East African community, get to that.
But also on several occasions, Robert, we've had countries within the East African bloc, you know, having conflicts. At one point, Uganda was conflicting with Kenya. Now, again, this also brings us still Uganda with Tanzania. They've had issues. If we are supposed to look at some of these things, what do you think could actually be the main challenges of all these blocks that we have? Not even only the East African community, even other blocks. Because at one point, I want to believe that these challenges, these conflicts, if they are continuous, it really kills the whole intent of having this regional block. So what could be some of those causes that would really drag it down?
With the formational East African community or revival, I want to say so far so good.
Yes.
Because when you look at previously the conflicts these countries had were basically war. One country provokes the other. One country is harboring rebels, fighting the other.
Yes.
One country is supporting rebels, fighting another regime due to trivial issues. When you look at the history of the M23, you know, the allegations that were flying left, center, and right.
Yes.
So that was the biggest challenge. Remember the days of Idi Amin provoking Tanzania if you were what and all that. So it was basically that maybe these heads of states have issues. One says, okay, I'll overthrow so and so, I'll support you, I'll give you military aid. But with the formation, I think so far so good. They have tried their best. Even where some countries are at war, we've seen that within the East African community, finding a way of holding peace talks. Look at how the South Sudan issue has been handled. You see Uganda, Kenya at one point, Tanzania at one point. So if we can avoid those confrontations, those provocations, those harboring, supporting, then I think it is a good way to go. The other has been economic challenges, where Ugandans have opened. Kenyans can come work, make money, go back.
They're free to actually do anything.
When Ugandans do the same for Kenya, it is a problem. Your work permit has expired. This, that. Then goods. You know, we fill your milk, we fill your cereals, aflatoxins, this, that confusion. So, if we can address economic and these kind of coups, wars from the region, East Africa will develop. For peace, I believe, so far, it seems our heads of states in this area are saying no to war.
Yes.
Right now, I cannot conclusively say that there is proper indication of research that rebels in this country are being supported by rebels in this country. However, for economic purposes, I think we've still failed to master the art. That's why when I saw Samia Suluhu in Uganda, Her Excellency, I was very happy. I saw it as a banquet of good news, that the 2019 sugar thing has been dealt with. So she's coming to undo some that were hindrances to trade.
Yes.
When I saw a border now open, Uganda,
and Rwanda.
When I saw President Kagame here, I was dancing to the party. Not for me, I was celebrating His Excellency being here, a gesture of peace, a gesture for our viewers. When I see Uganda and Kenya trying to settle this, so if we look at those two fronts, then, oh my God, I see East Africa very strong and the people enjoying the use and the reason for integration.
Well, I do believe in having quite a secure East African community and also having us be at par when it comes to education, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to security, every single thing in one way or another. It affects you as an individual, it affects you as a country, but also as we, the region. Well, we are yet to see what more goodness will be coming in. We already see the goodness from Uganda and Rwanda, the relationship being brought back to life. Now we see Uganda and Tanzania trying to undo what was done, you know, back in the old days. We hope this can continue, and we're yet to see more and more cooperation, more state visits. I always get excited every time I hear state visit, Robert. There is always a lot of goodness.
You're working on vaccines,
yes,
you work on together.
And I think that's quite a step for us as Uganda, but even the entire East African community. Well, Her Excellency, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, is in the country, day 2, and we're yet to see what more will be coming out of the discussions and all these bilateral trades that she's having with His Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of Uganda. Well, you can also share with us some of your thoughts on her state visit in Uganda. See what it means to you as an individual. Are you happy? Are you excited? Does this actually show that there is some growth going on here in Uganda? We'll be happy to share your thoughts with the rest of our Good Morning Uganda family. For now, we'll be getting into the papers to see the headlines. New Vision, Daily Monitor and Daily Nation from our neighbors over there in Kenya, seeing as they are on a very serious countdown to see who will be the next president. And of course, right after that, we'll be going on to the roads by yours truly to give you a hint on what's happening, where, when, and how you can actually navigate all these routes. Good morning, Uganda.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Get connected today with the My Airtel 4G smartphone and enjoy free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 Uganda shillings. That's free 2 GB for the first month and free 1 GB for the next 11 months at only 250,000 Uganda shillings with free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 shillings, making the effective price of the 4G phone 163,500 shillings only. Airtel, the smartphone network.
Affordable packages, great entertainment,
sports, local content, telenovela. Get the best entertainment for any budget. With GoTV, you will have great entertainment for as little as 13,000 Ugandan shillings per month. GoTV, great stories, Zidiwano. GoTV Uganda, love it.
Jennifer, Jukila, Wewagamba, I don't have waka. You bust the ice through me about my waka. Now come and see for yourself, see my waka that I got with Momonyabo. Jangola be waka, look at you waka, see my waka.
Simply deposit 20K or more on your mobile money for a chance to win 3 Toyota Succeeds and money to 2,000 lucky winners every week. We're giving away 24 cars and over 2 billion shillings of mobile money.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field could not be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
This is Good Morning Uganda.
Can use it for mortgages. Well, that is also a big story right there on page 3. But crossing over to Parliament, MPs allow merger of government agencies, which agencies have been merged, and that will all be right there on page 39 and 40 of the New Vision for this morning. Now, when it comes to Tanzania, Uganda, as they sign security infrastructure agreements, they show you a picture right there of President Yoweri Museveni with his Tanzanian counterpart Samia Suluhu after receiving her at State House in Entebbe yesterday. Well, that is also right there in more details, page 4 and 5 of the New Vision for this morning. Now, crossing over, how we shall modernize Uganda. I give you a picture of Ramadan Gobi right there, and more details on page 15 and 16 of the New Vision for this morning. Science teachers to get more pay. Well, after their threat to stop teaching, I think there is more of what has been promised. But get more on that story. That is on page 8 of the New Vision for this morning. Also, in immigration, 800 aliens found with genuine national IDs. Well, that is also there. Some people possess these IDs, but are they nationals? Now, there is much more to that story on page 6 of the New Vision for this morning. And on page 2, Cabinet proposes a total ban on use of plastics. Well, that sounds like good news to me. But there's also more. You can get the story on page 2 of the New Vision for this morning. They also give you a picture of saving shillings to 21 billion road caves in. Now, who is receiving this money? Where is it? The rise in Mbale City. They also give you a picture of some of the people on the road trying to protest. But also today in history, May 11th, 1971, detention decree published. That was according to the Minister of Internal Affairs. There is much more to that. Also in 1981, May 11th, Bob Marley passed on. If you remember the Jamaican reggae star, Bob Marley.
Now, looking at the second page of a Daily Monitor, Cabinet okays 700 billion Uganda shillings for scientists' salaries. The story continues right from page 1. And of course, they're giving you some more statistics about 139 billion Uganda shillings, the amount of money that was earmarked for science teachers' salary increment. Well, make sure you do catch up. Taking you back in history, well, today, Buckley appointed a commissioner, and still also in history, reggae star Bob Marley dies at 36. Well, if you are a reggae patriot, well, this would be good for you. And taking you through the faces behind Uganda's first satellite technology. Make sure you catch up. And transitioning onto the Daily Monitor Sports, players to juggle FWSL Crested Cranes Camp. And the big headline over there being Nabanji aims for continental glory. And we're looking at the boy wonders, some of the rugby Crane 7 stars doing what they are doing most. And still taking you through the English Premier League, Man City, another leap, will aim to take another giant step towards glory when Wolverhampton Wanderers welcome them to Mollen today. And of course, moving on to the second page of the Daily Monitor Sports, faltering Falcons continue search for first victory, and also taking you through how women must balance the boat. Which women, which boat? That is why you need to grab yourself the Daily Monitor this morning. And CMPG has fiery venoms, antidotes, bull down bomber. All that's in the Daily Monitor Sports this morning.
Well, crossing over to the New Vision Sport, the standout stars. Now they're giving you pictures of those that have stood out. They give you basketballer Jerry Kayanga. They give you rugby player Aaron and volleyball player Sharif Nabanji as they posed for their Airport Fort Bet Real Star Awards. They're also posing with Alex Mohanji right there, who is the ambassador. Now also they give you a story of two wrestlers for Commonwealth Games. Now, it seems like Uganda Wrestling Federation is naming two athletes to represent the country at the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham this July. Who were they? How far have they gone with wrestling? They'll give you also the kgs and the category they will be presented in. They're giving you a picture right there of Jacob Ntuyo, who is also going to be representing. Now there is much more to that story. Get yourself a copy of the New Vision. and get into that. Now also on the next page, I Am the Strongest Man. That is the powerlifter Mubiru, who is enjoying his good career growth right there, and how much he has achieved in terms of lifting, what you can look out for. Also, Captain's Bell, open way for Kasango. They give you pictures right there as the captain was giving out a trophy, and of course also with some of the members from the team. That is also right there in the New Vision Sport for this morning.
Moving on to the Daily Nation this morning, Uhuru hand in Kalonzo's about turn. And of course, that is losers in interview to get ministerial positions. And still looking at the election countdown, we are now counting 89 days to go to see who will be Kenya's next president. And still more coming in. Kenya COVID deaths at least 20,000, more than official count. Now, this is what the World Health Organization is reporting. And well, they're bringing you more in Kenya Revenue Authority in plan to snoop on your WhatsApp chats. Well, make sure you get the Daily Nation to get this story in full. And now you know that the elections are coming close. This definitely will be a little bit tricky for these Kenyans, but we can only wish them the very, very best. And still in more campaigns, and Ruto, of course, says, I will reverse the president's port and cargo directives. Well, will he be successful or not? We are yet to find that out. But while taking you to the roads this morning, the traffic, how is it, especially in areas of Chireka, Boyogere, as you're coming close to Nakawa and also trying to access the city center? Well, I am in your area code if you reside in places like these. Now, taking you all the way from Namanve as you're connecting to Boyogere. It's quite a freeway over there in Namanve, but as you approach Boyogere, the traffic starts to get heavier. The farther you go, the heavier it becomes. The traffic build-up over here clearly defines what you need to be doing or how you should be planning your journey. And as you get to the junction over here in Boyogere main town, it's very, very heavy because it's a very busy town and we have very many road users over there, so you need to also plan accordingly. However, connecting from Boyogere to Chireka, if you're using the bypass, there shouldn't be any hindrances. There shouldn't be any very serious hindrances. However, if you're using the back route, that is of course behind Nambole, and as you're joining Chireka, the traffic over here is very, very intense. And this is because mainly cars decide to avoid this route and they decide to use the back route. Again, shortcuts sometimes become very busy and you find the traffic very heavy in these areas. That is why you find some people will resort to using the main route. So yes, the traffic is very crazy in Chireka. You need to plan accordingly. Now also, if you're coming in from areas of Kamuli Road over here, if you're coming in from Namgongo Road and you're joining here via Chireka, well, you need to expect the traffic because it's very intense as shown by the red lines over here. And even all other connecting roads that are getting there, there are traffic build-ups in several spots on these roads. For example, if you look at Chireka Road, yes, the traffic build-up is here, and this is as you approach the junction as you're trying to join the main road. And now getting back to the main road, well, it's actually quite a place where you can navigate. The green stretches over here, of course, as you're trying to connect to Banda, shouldn't be a very, very big problem for you. However, as you approach Banda or even Banda itself, the situation is not really looking so good. As you can see, the traffic over here. Now, this is a junction. We have cars that connect in from very many other roads. Now, people who use Banda around Chambogo University, they come through and join this junction, which gives it quite a heavy traffic situation. Now, when you go beyond Banda and you're trying to access Nakawa, it shouldn't be really a very serious problem because the green lines over here show that. However, when you get to Nakawa, that is where the worry comes in. And by the way, I want to tell you this without any fear or contradiction. This is not rosy at all. Nakawa is not looking so good. In fact, matter of fact, the traffic is really intense. Usually when it's from red and it goes to maroon, that should give you a clear picture of what is happening there. So the traffic here is very, very crazy. And we have cars coming in from Ntinda, we have cars coming in from Chinawataka. That is for people who have decided to use the back route to connect from Chireka to Nakawa. So yes, all these cars eventually connect here, and that is why you see the traffic here not being very, very nice. And again, as the farther you go, the farther you get, rather the closer you get to the city center, the heavier the traffic becomes. Kampala Ginger Highway is also filled up with very many traffic build-ups, and that is for people who are trying to get into the city center. And you who's also living the city center, you're not exempted from this because the traffic build-ups are affecting people both ways. However, when you go through all that and you find yourself in around the Ministry of Internal Affairs, well, the traffic is also not any different. Well, otherwise, the stretch from Nakawa to town is quite free. But when you get over here at the roundabout, it's very intense, and it has been like this. The situation has been like this, very, very heavy for the last 3 days. Well, you have to plan your journey accordingly, or at least by now you should have understood the trends, at least from Monday, and you should be able to get to your destination in time. And also because we have very many parents dropping their children, seeing that schools open. So we have the scholars, we have parents who drop off children at their schools early in the morning. So yes, do expect quite some heavy traffic in very many places, or even on very many Ugandan roads as early as about 6 a.m. So yes, tomorrow you should be knowing the trend by now, and you should plan your journey according. Well, that's it from the traffic updates. I will now hand you over officially to Mollen, who will be telling us how is the weather looking like. We had some soft drizzles early in the morning, and they did start off as early as 4 a.m. I was actually awake, Mollen, and I had them. I was thinking, I hope this is not going to be heavy. Yesterday's weather was a little bit friendly, I should say. We didn't experience heavy rains, at least in Kampala. I don't know what happened in other areas, but today the showers were there, soft. But I cannot complain, or I am not complaining. I am happy.
I'll tell you one thing. It seems like today is looking a little bit different, because yesterday was quite a good one. We didn't have to deal with a lot of rains. That is especially for most areas within central Uganda. However, there were some rains for some areas, especially the southwestern part of the country, but also that was just short-lived. So generally yesterday was really good. But however, today looks a little bit different. Yes, we did start off with those drizzles, but it seems like even for most areas that have started to clear up, although we still have those rainy systems that will be forming later. So it's not at all clear for you this morning, but we'll be taking a look into your forecast later on. Now first, let's take a look at what is happening with climate arena and some of the news that is making headlines that is on the international scene. Well, we do know that most of the European countries have been moving towards looking at alternatives after the Russia-Ukraine war getting affected with natural gas. Now, when countries put sanctions on Russia, they also actually stopped getting natural gas from Russia, which we know is clean energy. So now that means that they have put the environmental parts in line. You talk about war, but then what is at stake? Unfortunately, that has been the natural gas. Now we're seeing that more countries, the European Union actually did come up to say that now they are going to jumpstart the solar energy campaign, and that means putting up more solar plants. That is in alternative to make sure that they are not depending mostly on the Russian gas. Well, this came out yesterday as there was a plan from the European Commission hoping to jumpstart a large-scale rollout of solar energy and rebuild Europe's solar manufacturing industry as part of its bid to win countries off the Russian fossil fuels as well, but also looking into how they can have alternatives when it comes to clean energy. Now, that is well called for. However, we also look at what has been happening with Japan recently. They have been talking about mostly, the biggest steel plant right there, which is Nippon. And this makes a lot of products, actually, most of them even come to Africa. Now, they have not been giving out a clear strategic plan when it comes to clean energy, how they are moving towards that. However, yesterday they did come out to say that they have gotten out a plan to supply carbon neutral steel from this year, starting action in 2024. Well, at least that is a plan that is in place, because what we've been asking from most of these big manufacturing companies is have a plan to make sure that even in time when you are able to move to that carbon neutral phase, then it is feasible. And this is what Nippon Steel, a company in Japan, is doing. They have agreed to actually move away from use of fossil fuels to make sure that their production, even when it comes to emissions into the atmosphere, is actually reduced as they go for carbon neutral. So that is quite a huge milestone when we look at such manufacturing companies that actually even they came up in COP26, that is the recent Glasgow conference, saying that most of their efforts will be towards achieving that carbon neutral, where we do have companies running, most of these manufacturing companies running, but with at least a target of net zero emissions. We're talking about especially greenhouse gases. And so when we see such a big company making its commitment, now they're promising us that the action will be in 2024. So we await for that. But also what is happening in South Africa is that South Africa has been also very big in coal production. Now, they are receiving money that is close to 8.5 billion US dollars. And this money is a financial package offered from some of the Western nations, the rich Western nations, to help the country shift away from coal. And what is happening is that most of the details actually did come out also yesterday from the Environmental Minister of South Africa, saying that this money will be mostly geared into making sure that they have more solar plants and of course wind energy. Now the question is, how far can this kind of financing go? Because yes, these rich countries, we know that most of them are the ones contributing to the problem that is there, because they give out the biggest emissions. If you look at countries like China, for example, the United States, these are big emitters. Now what they are trying is to make sure that they give money in terms of, green fund to some of the countries within the developing world to help them boost their capacity when it comes to climate action. Now I think this is a good move. Now how we actually use this money when it comes in is where the question is, or where we should be wondering, is this going to be used for the necessity that it's aimed for? Because we do know that these people will keep emitting, and most of the action that we're seeing now, yes, it is of course 1-2 companies that take up the strategic plan to go for carbon neutral or even climate action. So when this money or this funding comes through, it should be able to do what is necessary. For example, moving towards solar energy, wind energy, which obviously needs huge amounts of money that even as a country as Uganda, if we were to actually move towards renewable energy and consider having power supply from solar or wind, that would take chunks of money, maybe 3 years of financial budget for the country to even have the solar plants. So when this money comes in, that should be actually moved towards achieving that. But well, that is from South Africa, but also in Uganda we did get reports from the last couple of days over the rains that were happening in western Uganda, and what was worst hit is actually parts of Rubirizi, where we did see a hailstorm across the area, and most of the plantations and gardens that were affected, that was coming in from parts of Rubirizi, Katerera, where they've been dealing with quite some heavy rains for the last couple of days. Now also we do know that most of the plantations were affected by some of these hails falling into them, and this has been actually an area that was hit even earlier as the rainy season was starting. That is across parts of Chambura as well, where we did see most of the plantations that were also destroyed by a hailstorm. Now this is becoming really rampant across western Uganda. This is the same part of the country that has been dealing with mostly heavy rains and flooding for this season. We did see even parts of the midwestern parts of Fort Portal and Toroko area where they have been dealing with much of this flooding this season. Now also adding to the fact that even in the past seasons we've had reduced wet weather conditions over the area. Now when the rains come in and then they come with stormy weather, then it also gets disastrous, and already residents across the area are crying over maybe what is likely to be a hunger crisis over there, because they're saying that most of their plantations are down, the banana plantations are down, so many meaning that they could be looking at a huge disaster over the area. And of course, we did see some of the residents coming out to even take it across the media, across the media, saying that they need government intervention to make sure that they have foods on their tables. And this is what we're talking about. When you have weather extremes, when you have such extremes, obviously they are going to affect the residents of the area. So these are the people that have little contribution to what is happening around them in terms of climate variation, which is why government should be intervening to make sure that we have all these plans to have climate action, and of course have maybe our rainy seasons back to normal, where we don't have to see all these extreme weather events. But well, for today, we also want to take a look at what is happening across the country in terms of satellite. That is tapping in from the real-time data for UMIT's satellites. Well, we did start off with that rainy system across parts of Kampala and Wakiso. Now it looks like that is still there. If you look closely at that map, there is where you're seeing the red, orange colors. That's the rainy system that is still over the area and bringing in a little drizzles. It looks like that will actually be continuing even throughout the entire morning, but most likely that will be moving westward. So parts of central as well as midwestern Uganda, we could be looking at some of those rains crossing over even into the afternoon. However, some areas are going to be having quite a pleasant morning with sunny weather. We're looking at northern Uganda, Arua, Gulu as well, starting off with quite a sunny morning. Across the Karamoja region, quite a sunny morning for you as well. Across eastern Uganda, and of course also parts of southwestern Barra right now dealing with only sunny conditions. We do have sunny intervals as well for midwestern, Masindi, Fort Portal across that area. And southwestern Uganda, Kabale Highlands also starting off with quite some sunny weather. It looks like that is quite a good morning for you. You do not have to deal with rains for now, but then we do have some in the forecast for later in the afternoon. But right now we'll go ahead and take a look at the forecast that we have for this morning that is coming in from the Uganda National Meteorological Authority. We start off with the western part of Lake Victoria. That is where we do have Masaka, Kalisi, Zosembabuli and Rakai. We're forecasting isolated showers. We do have clouds developing over there that will be bringing in rains, starting off with a maximum of 26 for this morning across the area. Now, the central part of Lake Victoria, we do have Kampala, Entebbe, Wakiso and Mukono. We're forecasting isolated showers as well. We still have those cloudy conditions of the area that will be bringing in rains over several places. Also with a pleasant 26 degrees centigrade. It's quite cool, but it will be warming up as the day continues. Now across southwestern Uganda, we have sunny weather over there as we speak. We'll be having a mix of cloudy conditions as well for this morning, starting off with a warm 27 degrees centigrade. Eastern Uganda, where we have Soroti, Katakuya, Moria and Kumi, we're forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine over the area, and temperatures with a cool 27 degrees centigrade for that area, but we do expect those temperatures to go a little bit up in the afternoon. We could be looking at 30s even later in the evening. Now across Mount Elgon Highlands, where we do have Mbale, Bududa, Buko and Sironko, we're forecasting isolated showers. Also that will be across just a few areas. We already have clouds developing over the area, starting off with a low 25 degrees centigrade. We could be looking at much more of those rains even developing in the afternoon. Eastern Lake Victoria, we have Tororo, Busia, Jinja, Iganga. We did see a few of those clouds developing earlier this morning. We do have some rains already over the area, but those will be continuing into the afternoon, also starting off with quite a warm 27, and we could be looking at a clearing trend in the afternoon, so that might get into sunny intervals. The eastern side of Central, where we have Ruero, Woblenzi, Bururi, Nakaseke, we do have Nakasola in that category as well. We're forecasting isolated showers. We could be looking at that system crossing over into the afternoon, starting off with a cool 26 degrees centigrade, but also later in the afternoon, those rains might keep around the area, and that will bring in more of that cool weather. Across central northern Uganda, Gulu, Kitgum, Padel and Jumani, we're forecasting a mix of clouds and sunshine with a hot 28 for this morning, and more sun will be coming through even later in the afternoon, so temperatures will also be going up to the lower 30s for later in the afternoon. Now that area continues with mostly dry weather, also looking into the extreme side of West Nile, where we have Arua as well, and the Karamoja region looks like we'll be dealing with most of that dry weather for most of today and also for the next couple of days, because we do have more of the low pressure system developing over the Indian Ocean, and usually when those are there, they take away much of the moisture that would be coming towards our region to bring in a few rains here and there. So we could be at that for the next couple of days, especially for eastern Uganda, the Karamoja region and northern Uganda. Now if you're traveling there, then you would know how to prepare for that kind of hotness. But if you're a resident, mostly this weather has been even across the area for the entire season, because that area has been doing quite poorly when it comes to rains for northern Uganda and the eastern part of the country. But well, for this morning, I want to leave you with that. We do have the agenda coming up. Robert will be here to take you through that, but also later we'll be having sports highlights. Now, don't forget to catch us also on YouTube. We are streaming live. That is UBC Television Uganda, but also on social media. The hashtag is UBCGMU. Well, my name is Mollen, Kenyena. I want to wish you a wonderful morning.
This is Good Morning Uganda. Pick of the day on UBC.
You can only become a leader when there are problems.
Behind the headlines.
So what are we federating? Whether what's from another country can be, I mean, somebody must be there to hold everybody accountable.
Every Wednesday at 10 p.m.
First of all, we as elites of Uganda, we have made Museveni the issue. I can tell him Museveni is not the problem of Uganda. The problems of Uganda are much deeper. We can change the next 20 presidents and we'll still be this roundabout.
Was brought to you by.
Need to send money to a loved one but you don't have enough on your phone? Get away with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Jennifer, Jukila, Rewagamba, I don't have waka. You bust the eyes through me about my waka. Now come and see for yourself, see my waka that I got with Momo Nyabo. Jambola be waka, look at you waka, see my waka.
Simply deposit 20K or more on your mobile money for a chance to win 3 Toyota Succeeds and money to 2,000 lucky winners every week. We're giving away 24 cars and over 2 billion shillings of mobile money.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field couldn't be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite show.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
Football packages, great entertainment,
Sports, the local content, telenovela, the movies.
There is something for everybody.
Go TV, this is where great stories live. Get the best entertainment for any budget. With GoTV, you will have great entertainment for as little as 13,000 Uganda shillings per month. GoTV, great stories, Zidiwano. GoTV Uganda, love it.
Get connected today with the My Airtel 4G smartphone and enjoy free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 Uganda shillings. That's free 2 GB for the first month and free 1 GB for the next 11 months at only 250,000 Uganda shillings with free data for 1 whole year worth 86,500 shillings, making the effective price of the 4G phone 163,500 shillings only. Airtel, the smartphone network.
It's no secret that ICT makes learning easy.
The strides made in our field couldn't be possible without it.
And now we can watch our favorite shows.
My radio is my best friend.
UCC provides an enabling regulatory environment and policy guidance for healthy competition. We also facilitate ease of doing business in the communications sector through licensing, standardization, spectrum management, tariff regulation, rural communication development, and consumer empowerment. An informed consumer is an empowered consumer. UCC supports local content and innovations. Driving the development of a robust communication sector in Uganda is Uganda Communications Commission.
This week on UBC. This is Good Morning Uganda. Live from Now Avenue in UBC Studios. This is Good Morning Uganda.
We are midweek. Thank you for keeping it with us here on UBC TV, where we inspire Uganda. And every morning we are here to ensure that we keep you with the knowledge that we will see you throughout the day. How? Because you're well versed with what is happening locally, internationally. And now in the Good Morning Uganda agenda, which is this segment, we have guests in studios and we choose an issue of national concern. We discuss it. You can get a feedback by simply using our various social media platforms. Send us a message regarding that topic and the guests will respond to that. Once again, I'm Robert Kirabo Nyonyintono. At exactly 9 minutes past the top of the hour, we kick it off with our topic today, which is we want to look at the rights of workers. Now we know many Ugandans are workers, but what terms, what conditions do they work? COVID-19 made jobs a bit scarce because some people never got back to their jobs. Now with a few jobs, some employers may take advantage of that. Do you know your rights as a worker? Do you know the terms and conditions? Well, joining me on set are two gentlemen who are from Uganda Hotels, Foods, Tourism, Supermarkets and Allied Workers Union. A body that brings together people in this sector but also looks at various workers in this country. I have Moses Mauku, who happens to be the General Secretary of this union. Moses, good morning.
Good morning, Brother Kirabo. I take this opportunity to salute all Ugandans, especially the workers of this country. I greet you all.
When you talk about the workers, who isn't a worker? I believe even a housewife is working. Workers, are we only referring to those that earn a monthly pay? Are we referring to some level, maybe those with this? Who qualifies to be a worker, even before we go any further, Moses?
A worker is defined differently by different disciplines. ILO, International Labour Organization, defines a worker to mean that person who offers his or her labor for purposes of earning a living. That person is a worker. So a worker, like you are saying, it's not all about salary. It's all about somebody who offers his or her labor with the purpose of earning a living. So that is a worker in general terms.
Then on my extreme end, there is a man with a very unique name, actually the first I've heard of it. That is John White Baleke, Director of Planning and Operations. John White, most welcome to our studios.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kirabo, and a very good morning to all our viewers. I work with the HTS Union in the discipline as the Director in charge of Planning and Operations, and basically our work is to ensure that workers work within a conducive environment and within the framework of the laws established. And we are here to give details of some of these rights so that our workers and our members and the Ugandans can get to know some of them and how they're implemented and how they can also advocate for their rights.
This brings me to first shape more discussion. When you talk about unions, trade unions, workers' unions, some people will tell you unions smell ugly. If you talk of an organization and you're talking about unions, the bosses can tell, tolerate, don't dare. Some will tell you they welcome them. Help us demystify this thing called unions, workers' unions, allied workers and all that.
Workers' unions are workers' organizations. The workers' organizations are recognized institutions internationally and locally. I would probably say that a workers' organization or a workers' union is that representative, voluntary, democratic institution that is formed, run, managed, and financed by the workers themselves for the purpose of advocating, advancing, promoting, protecting, and defending the workers' social and economic interests. And all that is done through collective bargaining and underpinning the fact that there are both international standards and local legislation that guide the processes for the workers or the workers' organizations to undertake their mandate. I would probably wish to take this time to explain a little about how workers' organizations came into being. This was in the 18th century in America, where the workers in some organization, in some firm, felt they were being oppressed. You know, that time in the 18th century, we did never have, even the term workers was not there. It was a servant. And the employer today was that time referred to as, there is a term they used, masters. So it was master and servant. There was even nothing called salary for work. You would only be appreciated. And supervision was by a whip. If they find you not working, they whip you. You get. So these things have just evolved for us to even get into that relationship of employer and worker or employee. It came through a lot of struggles by those who were working those times. And they used to do boycotts, they used to do a lot of aggression that was being done that time for them to ensure that they can secure their rights. And that came to its climax sometime in the early 1990s, and that is how ILO was formed.
International Labour Organization.
Yes, in 1919. That is when the first International Labour Conference was caused in Geneva to officially form, when the government and the employers had agreed that they must recognize and work with the workers' organizations. And there are international and local legal frameworks that bring into being the workers' organizations. And some of the international legislation or standards are the ones that are used to even enact the labor laws or the local laws that we have here. All the 9 labor laws that we enjoy in Uganda today are derivatives of conventions that are discussed, agreed to by the tripartite partners, that is the governments, the workers' organizations, and the employers' organizations. In ILO, Jennifer, that is UN. So when the UN agency, known as International Labour Organization, formulates a convention or recommendations or treaties, these treaties are mandatory to be implemented by all member states of International Labour Organization, where Uganda is one of them. And actually the only country I know that is not part of is North Korea, because in North Korea they do not have, the tripartite cycle is not complete.
This brings me to John White.
Yes, please.
Now, John White, let's come back home. What is the situation like when you talk about workers' rights? He talked about the 9 labor laws we have. Can you briefly, I mean briefly, take us through them? Where are we standing as Ugandans in observing workers' rights?
Thank you so much, Comrade Kirabo. Uganda has enacted the 9 labor laws, one of which is the Labor Unions Act of 2006, the Employment Act, the Arbitration Act, the NSSF Act, the Occupational Safety and Health Act, and the rest. On implementation, the implementation of these labor laws, I will say, is 50-50. But where unions exist, it is entirely the role of the labor unions to ensure that they work hand in hand with the employers, and they go into, they sign agreements that spell out how the implementation of these laws at the workplace is going to be done. For instance, the Employment Act spells out that workers should have a right to a day off, a weekly day off, a right to annual leave in a year, a right to maternity leave, a right to representation, and if the labor unions have engaged with the employers, and these sections are provided for in their collective bargaining agreement, when workers complain of such issues not being implemented by the employers, then the workers' unions come in and negotiate, like he said in the definition, that we relate with the employers through collective bargaining. So we come and negotiate with the employers on how best these rights can be implemented at the workplace.
Mauku, when we talk about implementation of these rights, I know a number of organizations, a number of employees, where in these institutions you don't see workers' union. You said it's voluntary. But why is it that in most times they face resistance from any number of hotels? If you talked about having a workers' union, the proprietor will tell you, vanish. Number of organizations. Constitutionally, you have the mandate. But why are we still seeing this not being welcomed by many institutions?
Okay, thank you for that question. I think let me stem it from the legal framework. We have 2 conventions among the 8 core conventions by ILO. One of the core conventions of ILO that has been ratified by Uganda is Convention 87. And that is the convention that provides for freedom of association. for the workers to enjoy the freedom to form and or join trade unions of their choosing. And the other pertinent convention among the 8 core conventions that has also been ratified by this country is Convention 98. And that is the Convention on the Right to Collective Bargaining, where a person employed has the right to collectively bargain, to negotiate his or her terms and conditions of employment. The problem arises, even here, we have 2 articles in the National Constitution. Article 29, that provides for freedom of association in consonance with Convention 87 of ILO. We also have Article 40 of the National Constitution. Those 2 articles are the ones that give birth to the 9 different labor laws that we have. And in all those labor laws, every labor law speaks about representation of a worker by a union, representation of employers by their own unions. We have Federation of Uganda Employers, which is a union for the employers, but we also have sector employers unions or associations. Like you have the Uganda Hotel Owners Association, you have Temau, you have Uganda Manufacturers Association. All those associations are unions by the employers. On the other hand, we have 46, I think, registered labor unions here, also to represent the workers. The problem that we have, or the reason as to why some people, some employers do not want to work with unions. Number 1 is ignorance about the law. The law, specifically, the Labor Unions Act 2006, sections 3, 4, and 5 are specific on how workers should be allowed the freedom of association. And section 24, subsection D, provides expressly that every employer is bound to recognize a trade union for purposes of collective bargaining. It is as express as it is. And so many employers do not comprehend these legal frameworks. Reason number 2 is the history of trade unions. In the early days, trade unions in Uganda started in 1937. And that was during the construction of the East African Rift Valley rail line. Because trade unions had started a little earlier in Kenya, and very many Kenyan employees crossed to work on this same rail line. While they had a union the other side that organized them and they could speak for them, they found themselves in a very precarious environment in Uganda, and somehow they convinced the Ugandan counterparts to also form a union here, so that they could have a common voice, to have representation, so that their issues could be discussed with the employers. Then there were struggles here, including boycotts and other things during the 30s. And
so unions by then were trouble causers to those employing these people.
So that history there, and even in the 80s, in the early 90s, even here, we used to have a lot of strikes by different unions. So employers still have that mentality of strikes. And the other thing still, on the negative part of it, is we have unions in the public sector. UNATU, nurses union, medical workers union. Most of the unions in the public sector today are the ones that always threaten strikes, as compared to the unions in the private sector. And the reason is simple. The chief executive of the government workers, the civil servants, is a permanent secretary. And many of the employees in the public sector, some of them don't even know who their permanent secretary is. But that is the person who will resolve most of their issues. So that distance between the chief executive officer and the other person working in Katakwi or Kaperabiong, who has his issues or her issues, the only way to awaken the permanent secretary that there is a problem here is for them to say, if you don't do this, we shall not do the other.
Very funny.
Yeah, so that the problem is that...
Because when they go for this, they want to meet the president.
Exactly. For us in the private sector today, we have drastically scaled down on issues of industrial action in the form of strikes, because we talk to the employer directly. The owner of the company visits his business, and as long as you allow social dialogue, we speak. If there are issues, we raise the issues either through writing, we cause meetings and get to attend to these issues in a shorter period of time. So strikes have reduced because of allowing social dialogue between the employer and the workers' representatives.
John White, for workers out there, how do they join these unions? Because we know always a voice is very important. When you go to many workers, they have issues there. Sometimes non-government organizations have been their haven or redress. Sometimes others, like he said, it has been about striking. There are so many, I know, in the flower companies, those factories, workers there. Go to some of the industries. You look at their working conditions. They need protective gears, they don't have them. They get accidents, they treat themselves, they're injured on duty. You know, life goes on normally, yet there is a legal framework. There is where Uganda we are signaling that this and this must not be happening, but it's happening.
Thank you so much. Labor unions in Uganda are registered sector by sector. So the 46 labor unions Comrade Moses has talked about represent different sectors. So for instance, the HTS union is registered to represent workers in the hotels, in the tourism, in the supermarkets, the commerce sector, across Uganda. So what we do is to go and meet the workers in these different hotels, different supermarkets, and we create awareness to them in as far as their rights are concerned. And while we do that, we recruit them into labor unions. Others can learn about labor unions by getting examples from those that have benefited from labor unions. And so they can also call upon the labor unions to come and recruit them, take them on board. Though, as Comrade Moses has said, there is a lot of resistance from the employers. But when matters are easily addressed through the negotiations or the dialogues, it becomes a little easier for us or for the labor unions to recruit these workers or to bring them on board. The other issue is that the employers think that when labor unions come into place, there are some of the rights of management that are seen to be lost. Where issues of saying a worker has committed an offense and then the employer says, remove my uniform now and go away, those no longer exist. Because if someone has committed an offense, then the person has a right of being heard. The principle of natural justice provides that if I've committed a mistake or an offense, call me, sit me down with my representative so that I can justify why I should not lose a job or why I should not be penalized. So when the labor unions come in place, the right of the employer chasing you as he or she wants is seen to reduce, because now the law comes in place to provide that fair hearing under Section 66, which the employer may not want. And when the labor unions come in place, the person who was going to be either terminated is seen to be reinstated on duty and continues to do work. Now, the feeling or the perspective the employer has is that when this person is reinstated on duty, the general view of the workers or management is that now the union has won, or the employees have taken it all. So they seem not to respect us any longer. But that is not the right.
Okay, rightly talked about the workers. Of course, we know, Moses, that this is advocating for the workers. But let's look at the employer. Where does he stand to benefit? You know, if I allow in my company, if I allow in my hotel to have this union, where do I stand to benefit?
Okay, thank you. One of the things, actually many times, very many employers are inquisitive to know, what do I benefit by allowing my employees to become union members? First and foremost, it is a law that requires you to recognize. So when you recognize a union, you become a compliant employer. And that is a plus on your side, becoming compliant. But the union, in representing the workers, it causes stability, industrial peace at the workplace, and it can avoid a lot of wastage that could be bad things that an employee could do in revenge for the bad treatment. When you deploy a worker who is uncertain of his or her rights, there are negativities that you will expect. It has an implication, it has effects on your productivity. Many times, workers who are not certain of their stay in an employment, they become target workers. All the time they are on the lookout of what can I take from this organization, because he's not certain of whether he will work for a longer time. You get a worker who is certain of his or her terms and conditions of employment becomes stable, becomes productive, because he's sure that my supervisor will not wake up one day and say, remove our uniform and leave. He knows he can only lose employment through procedure. He can only lose employment for the right cause. Unlike in situations where a worker comes in, not even knowing, not certain whether he will even finish a day. Those things happen. Such workers are never productive. So when the unions come into a workplace, start negotiations, establish procedures, through negotiation, you become a productive company. But that would have been created or attributed to the coming into force of the union to establish these procedures. There are also losses that companies make in the form of industrial mishandling or mismanaging industrial relations matters at workplace. There are workers who commit offenses many times, and the employer will use unlawful means to stop this person. Once that worker goes to labor courts, that worker will definitely win a matter, and you pay lots of money to a person who committed an offense, but because for you used the wrong procedures to dispose of this employee. So when the union comes through negotiation, one, they reduce on the gap the myth that exists between an employer and the employee. The employer is all the time suspicious of this employee, and the employee is all the time thinking the employer is cheating on him or her. When we put these things on the table and we discuss, we even negotiate salaries. Why are you paying this person 500,000, not 550, or not 400? And the employee gets to understand that I was represented during the meetings that set the terms and conditions under which I work. That person is more contented with his terms. And there is a future. People work towards achieving in the future, and they become more productive. So there are various benefits that are attributed to a worker organizing into the union. than the problems you will envisage. Because if you want productivity, why would you look out for only employees that you are going to cheat? Pay little when you are expecting high. It only takes somebody who is
maximization. It's all about maximization of profits.
It does not help the process of production. Maximizing.
Because one would
where
say
you would have
Uganda,
even gotten more profits, you will be losing it because you are using workers that are not contented with what they do. You will lose if your profit margin, for example, is at 40%. Probably if you had a union, you would even climb to 60% with productive workers, happy workers. You know, there is one man in Europe, Ford, the one who makes these Ford vehicles. It is a company that is very, very old. But one time he made a statement and said that, leave me, take all my riches, but leave me with my workers. I will become Ford again. Even if you removed everything of him, all the riches he had at one point in time, and left him with his workers, he would still create the riches using the workers. So many employers have not appreciated that this one worker contributes immensely to the profitability of your company.
Well, many will tell you no one
depending on how you treat him. We also have a norm where workers say, pay me the way you want and I will work the way I want. Or pay me the way I want and I will work the way you want. It is more to do with you government workers. You come and put a coat here and walk out because they are paying you the way they want. These are the strikes we are hearing and seeing every day. Government wants to pay the workers the way they want, not the way the workers want. So the workers also in government, many of them are working the way they want.
Very interesting issues of workers' welfare and rights observancy. Like we said earlier, that many Ugandans are workers by the International Labour Organization definition. But what happens is we are looking at how their rights have been protected. How is the working environment enabling them to deliver, to work at their best? Many will tell you, yes, recently I had a group of workers calling for salary increment. But my biggest question was, okay, you're talking of salary increment, but do you have the basics that you need to deliver a good job? Or is it all about your wallets being happy? But because you don't have the tools to operate, at the end of the day, you may not give good outcome. Should we first deal with ensuring that what you need is available for you to work? Then you look at your salaries, or should we first look at salaries? Then last, look at the tools that aid you to work. Well, that is a question I leave to you, most of our dear science teachers. Yes, that government promised that come the 1st of July next financial year, that enhancement, you will receive it. We hope you listen and call off that, because our children, your clients, come to school to study most of sciences. Now, John White, rightly having had the benefits for both sides, those that employ and the people they employ, let's also understand, when we talk about workers' union, there is a term voluntarily, there is a term democratically. How do these two come? And then there is a term workers sustaining these unions. How do they operate? How do the three come in? Voluntarily, meaning one may choose to join or not. Then democratically, meaning leadership is elected. And then they fund the...
Yes, thank you so much. Those are the pillars of the union. Voluntarism is that the unions are joined by members freely. We talk to the members, we create awareness, we educate you.
So you can have a workers' union in UBC and I choose not to be part of it?
Yes. You choose not to join. But if you choose not to join, it's because of freedom of association. But if you are not a member, then you won't be represented if you have issues of disciplinary nature. And if you are to benefit from the terms negotiated and agreed upon between management and the union, then you are levied a 1% for the services the union does to you, while the member is paying a subscription fee of the 2%. depending on each individual union's constitution on their percentage of union dues to be remitted on a monthly basis from the monthly gross pay of a member. Unions are managed, run and financed by members themselves because they are workers' organizations. We don't draw monies from the employers. We don't draw monies from any other government institutions. The workers themselves fund and they run the organizations by the remittances they make on a monthly basis. So the more you mobilize members into the union, the more the capital base will grow. And as it grows, you will have some funds to enable you to reach other organizations within the jurisdiction of that particular union. So the most important thing here is that unions should be organizing on a daily basis to ensure that membership increases, the fund grows, and you reach more of the members that are within your jurisdiction. Yes.
Well, in the interest of time, gentlemen, I think I'll have your final remarks, but there is an issue that I want you to include in your final remarks. That is, today we have many workers that are working in the Middle East, externalization of labor, and we are seeing a number of reports. Do these unions, is there any legal mandate where you can come in, act, help out? This is a cry for workers, and these are Ugandans. Mauku, as you give me your concluding remarks.
Okay, thank you. I want to begin on the note of representation. As we represent workers, as workers leaders, we cannot effectively do it without representing employers. So we do represent both the workers and the employers within our sector. 2 weeks ago, I was in Geneva to represent workers in a conference where we were designing recommendations of how the tourism sector is going to be sustainable after COVID-19. I did not take permission from anybody, but I was selected as a titular to go and do that. So in doing such things, we are not only representing employees, and two, we cannot survive or thrive without employers. So in all we do, we also focus on continuity of employers or companies. So we take responsibility to also represent the interest of the employers as well, if we are to continue. Two is, I want to call on all workers in Uganda, the government and the employers, to continuously observe workers' rights, because it is the way to go. We need to do human-centered approaches in all that we do, because we are also humans. If you spoil the place where you work, the future won't be good for both the individual and the employer. I also want to mention about the issue of labor migration, especially the younger people that are flocking the Middle East for these assumed good jobs in terms of pay, but they also have very adverse effects on their lives as younger people. The government of Uganda has signed some bilateral agreements with some of the governments in the Middle East. The problem is compliance. The problem is character and maybe attitude. You know, even where these agreements do exist, the reality of what happens to this employee, because 80% or more of the migrant workers that go from Africa to the Middle East, they go and do domestic work. They are not in formal settings. The people that have gone there, I was recently in Qatar, I found a line of 6 boys speaking Luganda at Qatar airport, and I intercepted them. I greeted them in Luganda. They're doing very well, smartly dressed. They're doing formal employment, security. But the people who end up into people's homes, those receiving countries, they also have laws like we have here. They don't have proper mechanisms of monitoring what happens in somebody's home, in somebody's kitchen. And this is where our younger people are going to work. They are not working in government. They are not working in formal settings. Many of them are in people's homes. So what happens in the other home? It is a little bit of a nightmare. So we need to continuously engage as stakeholders, as actors, to ensure that we try to improve on what happens to this particular person who goes to work the other side. In as far as their welfare is concerned, they earn the money, yes. They have a contract of 2 years. Many of them fail to even accomplish the contract. The girl will work about 8 months before she completes her contract. She's ill. She has run mad. What happens there, we actually don't know. But very many of these girls have come back when they're totally devastated. So we need to continuously engage beyond these agreements, that the bilateral agreements, governments are sitting in an office and sign. It is important to have a longer eye into that. Begin to look into exactly what happens. Why do these young people get into trouble most of the time? But those who are chanceful, they complete their contracts, even go back and even do very well when they come back.
Well, I want to thank you so much, gentlemen. That is Moses Mauku, who is the General Secretary, Uganda Hotels, Foods, Tourism, Supermarket and Allied Workers Union. And that is John White Baleke, who happens to be the Director of Programs and Operation in the same union. Thank you so much for your time. And indeed, unions benefit both you who is employing and you who is being employed. Let's embrace them. Let's respect rights of workers. Have a lovely day. Ruben has a cup full of very entertaining sports news of what happened. So let me give him room to take you through sports updates. God bless you.